stayed there. They put me up there and
Oh, how nice.
oh, we're starting. I think we're starting. Okay, we are on.
Okay.
Hey. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another week. I am so excited to be here. And I have heard from a lot of you already that you are so thrilled to be talking about this book this week, which I am as well. So as it's just 7 o'clock, I'm gonna give us a second or two as people chime in and tune in. But if you're online, drop me a note in the comments and let me say hi, and also let me know if you can hear and if you can see and all that good stuff. But as we go into that, as you can see right above me, I'm not sure on your screen she's above me, but on my screen she is. This is Renee Rosen, who is joining us today and
everybody
or tonight, and we are going to be talking about this fantastic book, which oh, Laura's here. Hello. Okay, good. So we're starting to get our crowd. And Lori is here. She can see and hear. That is terrific. Thank you for, I always have a little bit of paranoia that things aren't working as I assume that they are. So thank you for letting me know. I'm going to go into, before I introduce Renee and we get into all the good stuff, I'm going to do a little bit of bookkeeping, as I always do. In the weeks to come, we have some fantastic authors lined up. I am, the other Renee is here. Renee Rivera. Renee, just so you know, she's one of my best friends, but she was in one of my original book clubs in San Francisco, and she has questions ready for you. She loves this book.
Good.
Oh, and my writing partner is here, Josh, everybody. Oh, and Karen is here. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Okay, so keep chiming in. I'll just keep doing this as we chat. Anyway, so next week, we have Martha Waters joining us. And if you loved the historical element of Renee's book, you'll love Martha's. Well, I mean, it's a completely different era. If you love Jane Austen and you love a rom-com, you're going to love Martha's book, To Have and to Hoax. I'm halfway through it. And I'm actually doing the audiobook, and the audiobook narrators are dreamy because I have a thing for, as you know, I'm a bit of an Anglophile. So they all have those British accents, and it's dreamy. So if you want to do the audiobook, I recommend it. So that's next week. And then the following week, we have Kelly Harms, whose book, The Bright Side of Going Dark, just came out today. So you can now get it. And I know there were price promotions going on all this week. I'm not quite sure if they're still good, but grab it. And you've got 2 weeks to read it. And Kelly is just fantastic. It's going to be a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to that. That's in 2 weeks. And then following that, on June 2nd, I can't believe we're already into June, but I have J. Ryan Straddle joining us, who everybody knows from Kitchens of the Great Midwest and his most recent, The Logger Queen of Minnesota. And J. Ryan has just been incredibly supportive of me, and we've actually done events together before. And so it's going to be fun to have him online, joining us from LA, where he lives. And maybe we'll do a little bit of Minnesota accent because he's originally a Minnesotan. So maybe we'll tease that out. We'll tease that out of him. Maybe we'll get some beer chat out of him too. Sarah is here. Renee is here. Hi, everybody. Lori is here. Josh is here. It's so great. Okay. One last thing before we get into introducing Renee and our book for tonight. I have open slots. You may have seen my post. I have some open slots in June, and I have some books in mind. I know that some of you have requested that we read something well, I know a couple of you requested the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, so we could read that. And if anybody wants to jump online and discuss that with me, you are very welcome. I would love a co-host. And then we've gotten several bookseller recommendations for When We Were Vikings. Renee, have you read When We Were Vikings?
No, not yet.
I haven't read that either, but apparently it's really, really funny.
Yeah.
And sort of Midwestern, so in flavor.
But I am reading the 7 Husbands of
Evelyn Hugo.
Yeah, I'm reading that now.
You
I just started it.
Yeah.
So.
So if anybody wants to jump online and give me a book recommendation or ask to be my co-host as a book clubber, you are welcome to join me. That would be fantastic. Bethany is here as well. So Renee Rosen is here joining us. And it just thrills me. It makes me smile ear to ear to say that she's joining us, because here's the kind of person that I am. I met Renee at some of you who were here when Pamela Klinger-Horn was our guest, and we discussed Eleanor Oliphant.
Love.
Yes, everybody loves Pamela Klinger-Horn. She in fact heard that you were joining us in a few weeks, and she was singing your praises. Well, it was at one of her events, one of the Literature Lovers Night Outs, that I met you, and we got to chatting. And that's when I bought Park Avenue Summer, and you signed my book for me. And then just months later, I emailed you and pinged you to blurb my next book, and now I'm pinging you to be on my book club.
You sent me the loveliest note, and I loved your book, and I'm so excited. It's such a unique concept, and it's so timely, and I think people are going to gobble it up.
Oh, thank you. So welcome. Hey, I forgot to warn you that one of the things that, because not everybody, I told Renee earlier when we were doing our technical run through that our bar entry on this book club is very low. You just have to find the link, and you have to bring a cocktail. So we should cheers.
Yes. Cheers.
Cheers to everyone. Here's to the coming summer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be a different one, but at least, we'll do our best to enjoy it. I forgot that since you don't have to have read the book, that I would start with a synopsis. And if it's okay with you, instead of I could put you on the spot, but I'm just going to read what's on the back, because I think that's actually really great. Okay, so for those of you who haven't gotten to read it yet, although Renee told me today that it's on price promotion, the ebook is for $1.99, correct?
Yes. Yeah, across all retailers. So
all retailers.
Yeah, Amazon, Nook, Google, Apple.
Awesome. Okay. So
Kindle
take advantage of that.
People, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Oh, Ange is here all the way from Canada. No spoilers. She asked for no spoilers. Okay. It's 1965, New York City, and at Cosmopolitan magazine, a brazen new editor-in-chief, Helen Gurley Brown, shocks America and saves a dying publication by daring to talk to women about all things off limits. New York City is filled with opportunities for single girls like Alice Weiss, who leaves her small Midwestern town to chase her big city dreams and unexpectedly lands a job working for the first female editor-in-chief of Cosmopolitan magazine, Helen Gurley Brown. For Alice, who wants to be a photographer, it seems like the perfect foot in the door, but nothing could have prepared her for the world she enters. Editors and writers resign on the spot, refusing to work for the woman who wrote the scandalous bestseller, Sex and the Single Girl. And confidential memos, article ideas, and cover designs keep finding their way into the wrong hands. When someone tries to pull Alice into a scheme to sabotage her boss, she is more determined than ever to help Helen succeed. While pressure mounts at the magazine, Alice struggles not to lose sight of her own dreams as she's swept into a glamorous world of five-star dinners, lavish parties, and men who are certainly no good, because if Helen Gurley Brown has taught her anything, it's that a woman can demand to have it all. And Jan just actually got online and she says, love your books, exclamation point.
Thanks, Jan. I'm so glad.
This is actually your fifth book, isn't it? 4 set in Chicago, and this one. That's a sign of a good author. If you can't remember how many.
I had a book that was set in my hometown that always gets, it's sort of like in its own little island, Every Crooked Pot. So that came out in 2007.
And that is young adult, correct?
It was written as an adult novel, but published as young adult. It was like a schizophrenic publishing experience. So
gotcha.
Some booksellers put in memoir, some put it in fiction. So
what is your hometown?
Akron, Ohio.
Akron, Ohio.
So
okay. Oh yeah.
And backdrop for fiction.
And Alice is from Ohio, but your other books are Windy City Blues, White Collar Girl, What the Lady Wants, and Dollface. And then this one, and we'll talk about your forthcoming book, which is coming out next year, in a little bit. But why don't we get started, and you can tell everybody what led you to this book, and in particular, Helen Gurley Brown.
Okay, so, as you mentioned, I had done 4 previous novels that were set in Chicago, and I knew I needed some new territory. And I'd been binge watching Mad Men, and I just fell in love. I've always loved New York. I lived there for a short period of time, and I knew I wanted to set a novel in New York in that time period. And I needed that backdrop. Like, what is the glamorous industry that I can set a story? And I started thinking, I'm like, well, I can't do advertising, even though that would have been my former profession, but that had been, that's Mad Men territory. And so I started thinking about a magazine. And originally this book started out as a fictional magazine, and a group of marginalized secretaries who were trying to take over the magazine. And I was talking to my editor one day very early on, and it was just a blinding glimpse of the obvious. It's like Helen Gurley Brown and Cosmo. And we went back to the beginning, and we were off and running from there.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. The presentation that you did at Literature Lovers Night Out was so fantastic, because one of the things that you were able to do visually was show some of the covers that made her so famous and made Cosmopolitan so. Do you have them?
This is I keep it in a protective shield, but
look at that! Wow, you have the magazine.
This is the first magazine that Helen Gurley Brown edited. Before that, they were abysmal. They were just, as Helen would say, not sexy. And your eye just goes straight to what, Helen called the bosom. That's what she was after. And, Hearst was just appalled, but yeah.
Hearst the publisher. So yeah, Renee is saying that is so cool. I think it's so cool too. That's a collector's item. No wonder you have it.
Yeah.
In plastic.
And it really helped during the writing, because I needed to know who was advertising in there, what the other articles were, who the other writers were. And so that was really helpful in terms of research.
That's the model Renata, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And there's some scandal, and you cover it in the book. There's some question about wher somebody had her turn the shirt around or not.
So back to Exhibit A. Her top, so legend has it, is actually on backwards. That it was very high, right under her collar, under her neck, when she came out, and it was scooped in the back. And Helen turned it around, because once again, it's all about the bosom. So
it's all about the bosom. That should just be a motto. It's all about the bosom. So I'm gonna I love sometimes to just read a section of the book, and I should warn everybody, there's no spoilers in this, but I'm gonna read the last sentence in the book, because it so beautifully sums up the theme of this entire story. And the last sentence reads, and now this girl from Youngstown, Ohio, who is Alice, has her heart and soul on display in this fashionable Chelsea gallery. She's a photographer. And these women in my life are the ones who truly understand what it took to get me here. So she's a photographer, and she's surrounded by all the people, with one exception, who really brought her to that place. And notably, it's women, very strong women who influenced her life. Yeah.
And again, no spoilers, because you find this out in the very beginning, is that, you know, her mother has passed away, and she's really looking for female role models. And, you know, one that she finds is Helen Gurley Brown.
Yeah.
Good, bad, or, you know, indifferent.
Well, I mean, there's, the relationship is wild, but I think it definitely shapes her and opens doors for her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Or encourages her to open doors herself, you know, to kind of bust through them like the Kool-Aid guy.
You know, I think she discovers a lot about who she is. You know, going from Youngstown to New York City is like going from 0 to 120, like boom. And, you know, she's exposed to all this. And I think it's through her association with Helen that she learns how to navigate and get some, you know, for lack of a better word, some street smarts in terms of relationships and men and all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Ange is asking a question about any feedback from people who actually worked at the magazine back in the day. And I know that you did a significant amount of research and some very personal research from people who knew Helen Gurley Brown. So why don't we wrap all that up into one question?
Okay, so I have heard from people who worked with Helen Gurley Brown, or worked at Hearst, or worked at Cosmo, and it's all, you know, they feel like it sort of brought back memories, and so that made me feel really good. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, and I tend to get really crazy lucky when it comes to research. And I was introduced to a woman who regarded Helen Gurley Brown as her second mother. So Helen Gurley Brown was Mommy Helen to Lois Cahill. And I met Lois, and we kind of hit it off, and she vetted the book for me. She shared stories and photographs and letters. And every time I would start to veer off course, she'd be like, you're starting to sound too much like Anna Wintour. That wasn't Mommy Helen. And little things like the little chair in her office came from Lois. And she sort of, the more I got to know Lois, the closer I felt to Helen Gurley Brown, you know, in terms of how she spoke and how she would respond to something. She was very sly. She was always a few steps ahead of everybody in the room, you know, and she knew exactly how to, she was the loveliest little manipulator there ever could be. You know, she always knew the end game. She knew where she had to get everybody, but she was so clever that, you know, she made you think it was your idea. So
that's so
she had those men, you know, she's 105 pounds or 110 pounds, and she's going up against all these men, these very conservative men.
Yeah.
And she beat them at their own game. So
because a lot of, I mean, in your author note, you are very specific about where you stray in the storytelling from what is factual.
Yeah.
But most of this book is factual.
Yeah.
So there was an effort to sabotage her. There was huge kickback. There were huge, like, portions of the staff that quit as soon as she came on.
Yeah.
All of that, you know, and you want to talk about any of that? Yeah.
You know, so she had written, I have more props here. So Helen Gurley Brown was basically known, I should put my mirror thing so you can read it right, but Sex and a Single Girl. She was known for that. You know, in 1960, I think it was 1962, this came out. And, you know, nice girls, you don't talk about, you know, sex. And you certainly don't write about it, but this book became a bestseller, like sold, I don't know, 2 million, I think in the maybe first month or so. Sorry, I've got my
Holy
lighting
cow.
guy here. My lighting tech is trying to put more light on me. Okay. Whoa. Okay. Now I'm blind. Now I am blind. I guess I'm gonna stay blind because I can't reach up there. Okay, anyway, so back to Helen Gurley Brown. So she was sort of known for this, and it was a very controversial book, even though it sold like hotcakes, because clearly women wanted to hear what she had to say about being a single girl and having sex. She gave women a license to go out and have a full life and she, to her, sex was absolutely essential. It was like oxygen to Helen Gurley Brown. And
Yeah.
so she had this reputation, but she knew nothing about magazine work. She'd never worked at a magazine. She'd never been an editor. And her husband basically convinced Cosmo was going down the tubes. They were getting ready to fold Cosmopolitan magazine. And I should back up to just say that I had always assumed that Helen Gurley Brown started Cosmopolitan magazine, but it had been around since the 1800s. And it was a literary magazine, if you can believe that. And so, she went in with, people were like, I am not working for the woman who wrote that book. And they quit. And, they were so afraid that she was going to turn Cosmo into a version of her magazine, which is exactly what she did, and she was just a very savvy marketer. And she knew, she just broke all, this magazine is so tame by today's standards, but this changed the face of magazine covers. You never saw anything like this. And, and then there were a gazillion copycats after that.
Do you think from your research, did you have any insight into whether the bigger protest because people, the people at the magazine who ended up quitting or at least opposed, they didn't want to be associated with that type of writing, or was it more that they didn't think it would work and they didn't want to be going down with the ship?
Probably a combination of the two. One, that this is going to fail anyway, and Hearst wanted her to fail. And two is, I write for Cosmopolitan. I write about fluoride, because by then it had gone from being a literary magazine to a magazine for suburban housewives. So, I write about fluoride and casseroles, and I'm not writing about, oral sex and, God knows what else, were in those early issues. And I think she offended people. I think she shocked them, because she talked about sex the way other people talked about the weather. So she never blushed. She never got, and these people would just get so frustrated, and, I think she intimidated them, and they just bailed on her.
Yeah. I suppose that would be so foreign. You wouldn't know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Ange is saying she doesn't think it's luck when it comes to your research. You said you got lucky. She doesn't think it's luck. So a compliment.
Well, thank you. But I do. I just I put it out there, and the right people come into my universe, and it makes all the difference.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you have a very welcoming style. Renee, I can't differentiate between the two of you. I can't call one of you my Renee or the other Renee. So Renee from California is saying her girls, in quotes, so in other words, Helen's girls, needed to know all of these important things. And that's one of the things that you really nail, not only when you talk about Helen Gurley Brown, but in this book very clearly, is that she knew her girls. Yeah. And then they resonated with that. They knew she knew them.
She cared about those girls. She called herself a mouse burger. And, and she did a complete makeover on herself. She wore wigs, false eyelashes. She went to some sort of speech therapist to change the way she talked. So she didn't sound like she was from the Ozarks. And, But she really identified with these girls, maybe because she had such a terrible relationship with her mother, but no one was telling them that it's okay if, I'm not as bold as Helen, so I won't say some of the things that Helen wanted to reassure these young girls about, but she was almost like a big sister or a really cool mom. And
Yeah.
she wanted to sort of take them by the hand and say, it's okay. And you're more normal than you think. And that, you can be better. If you want to improve upon yourself, you can.
What do you think that was based on, this confidence, this assuredness on her part that it was normal? Because every message was telling women, girls, young women, that it was very much not normal. What do you think it was about her that she understood the opposite to be true?
Well, I think part of it goes back to her mother, who always said to her, you're not a very pretty girl. You're going to have to use your brains because you're just not a very pretty girl. And I think that set something up in her. But I also think because she became successful, she was in advertising. She was one of the first female copywriters. In fact, for people who did watch Mad Men, Peggy Olson's character was based on Helen Gurley Brown. And
I did not know that.
yeah, isn't that cool?
Yes, we're rewatching it again. So,
Yeah,
now I get to think about that.
yeah, because she started out as a secretary.
Yep.
Helen, was a secretary, and she went to work for the creative director, and he gave her a shot at writing some copy, and she was really good at it. And so she became very successful as a copywriter, to the point where her husband said, write a book. And that's where Sex and the Single Girl came from. And then it all sort of spiraled. So, but in terms of what gave her that sort of chutzpah in the first place, because she was the first one to say, I'm not the most beautiful girl in the room, but I'm the girl that a man's going to cross the room to talk to. And, I think she lost her father at a young age. And so I think that she put men on a pedestal, which is, so she was a feminist on one hand, and yet very dependent on men on the other hand. So especially you see it a lot with her husband. But I think she just really adored men, and she wasn't afraid to show that. And
yeah,
I think that might have had something to do with it. And she was just all about improving, getting better. And, you have all these tools. You have makeup, you have padded bras, you have false eyelashes, you have false nails, you have psychoanalysis. Go make yourself better.
And she took advantage, which is,
and she showed others how to do it.
And then she taught others how to do it. Carol Ann Tack is joining us. Carol Ann was our guest last week. Yay, good to see you, Carol Ann. And Jan, who loves your books, she said earlier, she said she first heard you in 2016 at Excelsior Bay Books in Excelsior, thanks to Pamela. And she said it's great to see you again. We have a question from Laura about your own tribe and your role models, but I want to come back to that because I don't want to lose Laura. We're not ignoring you. So I loved that you wrote, I mean, it's historical fiction. I love that you created this Alice character. And you say in your interview at the end, by writing from Alice's point of view, it allowed us to explore some new angles and show the impact that Helen Gurley Brown had on single girls. And so you really personalized it by making, this Alice character, even though she had this influence on millions of people. By creating this Alice character, you distilled it down.
But, one thing I do feel like, for me, if I'm going to write a novel based on a well-known figure, I don't want to just fictionalize someone's biography.
Yeah.
You know, there was already so much out there. I want to be able to bring something new to the story, illuminate some new angle or some theme. And I didn't even realize it at the time, but Allie was a great vehicle for showing the impact that Helen Gurley Brown had on these girls.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know? But that
agree with
that was the reason, because I wrestled in the beginning, like, should I tell it from Helen Gurley Brown's point of view? And I'm thinking, but what am I going to bring to the party that's new, that people don't already know? So,
especially because she wasn't, you know, sometimes authors do that quite successfully if someone was a very private, public personality, but she wasn't a private public personality.
No, she was way out there.
So I love to, I was telling you earlier that I am always amazed by people who are able to do so much research. I know you say that's the fun part, and I totally can see how you would say that. It's just, it's not one of my, I don't know. I guess I don't trust my skills enough. I don't trust my research skills enough. Do.
I need some guideposts along the way, you know?
Yeah.
Like I have a framework, at least when I start. You just start, you know, we all start with a blank page, but you really, you know, I make a mess in the kitchen. I at least know that certain things have to happen in the course of the book. Now, how they happen, how they come about, I don't know, but.
Oh, that's a good way of looking at it. Well, you went to New York and I loved this. You figured out exactly where Alice would have lived on the Upper East Side. You looked at an actual apartment, and that served as a reference for her efficiency in the book. And then I love this too. You followed the route she would have taken to work.
Yeah.
You really, you walked in her shoes. Well, I love that.
I needed, you know, even though I had lived in New York, I had to go back and see it through Allie's eyes and also through Helen's eyes. So we literally found an apartment on the Upper East Side, which was known as the girls' ghetto, because in the 60s, you know, all these new opportunities were open to women. And so they were young, you know, young girls were flocking to New York, and that was considered like the safest area. So that was the girls' ghetto, where they could afford to live. And I wanted to, you know, what was her view like? What was her hallway like? How many, you know, and it was above a butcher shop, the actual apartment that we found. And then we walked to where Helen Gurley Brown's apartment was on Park Avenue, because Allie would have had to have done that. And then the bus that Helen took, because Helen did ride the bus every day to work, and then had to eat and drink our way through Manhattan, which was really, that's tough research.
Carol Ann is saying she loves that you did that deep dive. I did too. I when I read that, it just hit me. So Helen, you know, we could go 9 miles into feminism and her view of feminism, but she really kind of got into some trouble towards the end. She made some maybe not so in tune comments about homosexuality and AIDS, and she made some not so in tune comments about sexual harassment. Where do you think she would have stood in modern day? Like, in the Me Too movement.
Yeah. It's interesting because Lois and I have had this conversation.
Oh, really?
And I think that Helen Gurley Brown, she would not, she'd be a bit out of step with us. She would be all for women, standing up for yourself and equal pay and this, that. And certainly if somebody's, you know, putting the moves on you, and you have every right to say no, but her take would be, you know, you should be flattered that your coworkers are finding you attractive. She wouldn't understand. She would think that, I can just see her saying that, you know, you should be flattered. It's a compliment. And, you know, even during the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill hearing, she said, you know, you should be worried when they're not making passes at you. So that was her mindset. And I got to believe that it would not have changed a whole lot. I don't think she would have evolved into it. She'd be all for women's, and she definitely saw herself as a feminist, and she would be all for women's rights and equal pay, and you should be respected. But my God, if somebody wants to pat you on the butt, that's just a compliment. Don't take it so personally.
Well, that's how that was her goal, right? I mean, she set out to change the perspective that her mom had planted in her head about her, that you're not very attractive, you're going to have to use your brain. So when she got there, that was success in her mind, right?
But one thing about Helen Gurley Brown, she never prescribed to sleeping your way to the top or using your sexuality. Use your sexuality, but it was all, if you find someone attractive, go for it.
Yeah.
No, but you don't have to sleep with someone just because they're the boss or this, that, and the other. But if the boss happens to be someone you're attracted to, then you should go for it. So that was sort of her distinction.
Gotcha. So don't use it just for promotion's sake. So it is 7:35. We're going to start to wrap up, but I am going to ask Laura's question and let Renee answer that while you all get the chance. If there are any final questions that you want to submit, do that now. This has gone so fast. It's been so fascinating.
So Laura's interviewer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, you make it easy. So Laura's question came when we were talking about Alice and her tribe after the section that I wrote. And she says, so Renee, do you have a tribe of female writers cheering you on or a particular role model yourself?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I will say is that the writing community, particularly historical fiction, is so supportive. So we have a group of us, like Chanel Clayton, who did Next Year in Havana and The Year We Left Cuba, and her new book, The Last Train from Key West, comes out, I think it's June 12th. She's been just a tremendous support. Sarah Gruen has been a critique partner of mine for years. Karen Abbott, Tasha Alexander. There's just a whole community. Amy Sue Nathan, Kate Quinn, Stephanie Thornton. There's a group of us that we all happen to share the same agent. So we've all sort of really bonded. We all met at the Historical Novel Society, and we've all stayed in touch. And, it's wonderful. You've got people you can bounce things off of. So that's my group. That's my, I feel like, writing is very isolating. And so in some ways being in quarantine doesn't feel a whole lot different than, but it's really nice when, you sort of get stuck or you need some encouragement. You and I chatted earlier today and that was great. Just it's really nice to connect with other people who are, it's not an easy business.
No, it's not. It is terribly isolating, and you need those lifelines. I mean, they literally are lifelines. My writers group is just fantastic. Carol Ann asks, what was your most memorable New York City meal while researching?
Memorable. Wait, I'm going to check with my lifeline over here. What was our most memorable meal when we were in New York? The Oyster Bar with Julie? Probably. Yeah, probably the Russian tea room.
Oh, yes, because you went to all of her favorite haunts.
Yeah, because that was where all the Hearst people hung out and Helen hung out. And we went there and we were given a special tour and they took us upstairs with this huge bear, ice sculpture, like glass bear, and the most ornate room you can imagine. I mean, it's so...
Love it.
It's so, there's a Yiddish word, ungepatchkid. It is ungepatchkid out the wazoo. And, everywhere you look, there's like more stained glass and more gold and more. So, but that,
I love it.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
I love it. I love it. Well, I don't want to let you go before hearing real quickly about your next book and when it's coming out. And then we need to tell everyone where to find you online.
Yes. Okay. So more props. Here is the next book. It's called The Social Graces. It is the story of Mrs. Astor and Alva Vanderbilt vying for control of New York society during the Gilded Age. So
I'm so excited.
1870s up to the early 1900s. And these are women that had more money than they knew what to do with. So they built massive homes that they called cottages. And they threw balls for their dogs, and they had 9-course meals and balls that went on until 6 o'clock in the morning, and the clothes. And it turned out to be a lot lighter and more fun than I had initially thought it was going to be. It was a tough book to write, though, for some reason.
The Social Graces, and you said April 2021?
Yes.
Okay. And will you come back on if we're still doing this?
Absolutely.
Okay, and tell everyone where they can find you online, because Renee's she has really good recommendations too online. You should follow her.
Oh, I love, if I read a book and I enjoy it, I love just sharing, like,
yeah,
I want to tell everybody. So on Facebook, Renee Rosen author is my Facebook page. Twitter, Renee Rosen 1. And I'm on Instagram. I think it's Renee Rosen _ after the N, I think.
Yeah.
I'm still getting the hang of Instagram, so I don't get it at all. I need a teenager. Can I borrow one of your children for?
Yeah, but I will tell you, they're like, Mom. Maybe they'd be nicer to you. I mean, they're very nice, but like.
So not intuitive. People send me stories and I have no idea what I'm doing, and messages, and I probably have offended people, and I'm sorry.
Well, thank you so much. This was wonderful. It
was great to see you, Gretchen, and thank you everybody for your questions, and it was fun.
Oh, so thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you next week for Martha Waters and To Have and To Hoax. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.